Welcome, Natty. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on this podcast.
I know, it was so great because I was on yours, and I know you're a great interviewer, so I hope I can, do the same for you.
No, I think you're going to set the bar really, really hard.
Well, first of all, I want to know, viewers, check this out on Natty's YouTube or my YouTube, but he's a big guy. Tell us, have you always been that muscular and filled out? I'm very impressed.
Well, honestly, growing up, I was pretty chubby. So when I moved here from Thailand, I didn't play any sport. I was a swimmer, competitive swimmer in Thailand, but just never really got into working out. And then as middle school kids are tough.
Yeah.
And especially just moved here. So I'm like, all right.
So just boys are tough too, because obviously I only have girl
I
perspective.
think girls are worse.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I want to say girls are way worse. I'm so lucky to be a boy when I was moving in here. But
they can still call you names and stuff.
Of course, yeah. And my real name is Nataponpong, so it's 14 letters.
Oh, wow.
So can you imagine just moving here and I remember just the teacher would just look, and as soon as they pause, I'm like, that's me.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh yeah, here I am. So fast forward, I changed my name legally to Natty when I got my citizenship. So that's a lot easier for people to call me. And remember those Scantron bubbles they have to fill out? Yeah. So I wouldn't fit at all. So now I can fit. But yeah, I mean, my journey to healthcare always started with fitness. So I started working out freshman year of high school. And I think back then everyone was watching wrestling, right? And then when you watch wrestling, you see guys they work out. I was like, all right, I want to look like that. How do I do that? So I joined the YMCA, and they had an after-school kids program. And this one guy just kind of hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna work out. And I think the biggest win I got for the first time ever was to be able to do one push-up. And I remember I was showing my dad. I was like, Dad, check this out. And I was doing one push-up, and he was like, oh, that's pretty good. He's like, well, can you do 10? So, and then from there, I'm like, cool. I'm going to keep going down the path. So I think fitness is always, since then, has been a big part of my life.
Do you feel like that, because I imagine moving to a new country, a new culture, a new school, friends and all that, do you feel like fitness empowered you at a time that was lots of change was happening and gave you more sense of self?
I think that's a great question. Yes, I think looking back is a good self-discovery journey to, I put a quote the other day is that, a person is both a sculptor and also a marble. So I think to me, the journey to fitness is that you are your own marble, but you also get to sculpt what you want to be your ideal self to be. And I think without working out, I wouldn't have made that realization. And, because I was working out, I was getting bigger, I was getting result. Friends that I know, people who wouldn't normally talk to me, would come up and ask me for some advice. And now I can create my own friend group. And I mean, the coolest thing was we all get off the bus after school, would go to my apartment, wash pumping iron, and then walk to the YMCA together. And it worked out for 2 hours. And that's
awesome. Well, that's a really great after school activity. I'm sure there's a lot worse out there.
Yeah.
So then moving on from there, when did you decide that you wanted to do some kind of fitness wellness as your profession? Was that pretty early on? And then how did you kind of clarify physical therapy, which is a very kind of specific niche of fitness wellness?
Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, I always have a job. Right? Ever since I was 16, I was a busboy at a Thai restaurant. I was a busboy at a Japanese restaurant. I did catering. Then I worked in retail. And then from there, I ended up working at New York Sport Club at a kids club doing kids' birthday party. But when I worked there, I got free gym membership. So I started working out more and more. Then I started working out with some personal trainers who became my friends. And they were giving me tips and tricks of how to train, this and that. And from there, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I was like, you get to do this for a living? People pay you for you to tell them how to work out and then get them results. I was like, that's really cool. So when I graduated high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't do the best with my SAT. So I ended up in community college for 2 years. During that time, I then studied to get my certification to be a personal trainer. So I moved from New York Sport Club kids section to personal training. And then from there, I started training people. I started training myself, like even more and more. So I really got into it. And within those 2 years, I completely changed from wanting to do nursing school or business to kinesiology. And then I applied to University of Maryland to get a degree there. So I was like, all right, great. I think this is where I'm going to be, which is in the fitness field. And even when I graduated University of Maryland, I thought I was going to move to DC and open like a boutique studio or some sort. But, you know, my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, she was like, well, maybe you should explore somewhere else. I think you have, like, you're good at what you do, but I think you have other potential that you can probably help more people. And she said, like, you can't get up at 4:45 every morning and sustain a living that way. I was like, all right, that's a good point. So I moved back home. A friend of mine got into CrossFit, got me into CrossFit. So I was like, oh, this is great. This is a different kind of fitness. I've never trained like this before. I was really into it until I got hurt and I injured my back. So I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks. Literally, I was crawling everywhere. And during that time, like mobility WOD, which is like Kelly Starter, was really big. It's kind of like a different kind of PT because I didn't know what physical therapy was. I've never got hurt before. And I started doing some stuff on my own. I went and saw a PT, and a week later, I was able to walk. My pain's gone. Just doing like repeated extension, all of that stuff. But back then, I didn't know that. So I was like, oh, this is witchcraft. Like,
Let's hope everybody thinks that.
Yeah. And at that point on, I was like, this is really cool. Like, I know how to get people stronger, but when people were in pain, when I was doing personal training, I didn't know how to help them. So I was like, what if I learn how to help them get through the pain and then help them continue on their path of fitness or whatever it is they want to get into? I was like, that's got to be really, really cool. So I decided at that moment I was going to, you know, pivot into the physical therapy route, took some more prereqs, did some shadowing hours, and applied to the one school that's closer to my house, which is Dominican College, but now it's Dominican University. And I got in, and then the rest is kind of history.
Wow, that's so cool. There's so many things I want to ask you. Getting back to CrossFit for a moment, because I've actually treated a couple of people who had got like, it was out the low back. So I'm curious, do you know what move it was you were doing?
It was running and front squat.
Yeah.
It was like, I was lifting under fatigue. And during that time, you know, as a competitor, especially in a CrossFit setting, what you don't do is you don't listen to your body. And you're just trying to always beat somebody else. And I think that's why sometimes most people get hurt, because they kind of put away their own intuition. And you and I know in life, if you don't listen to your own intuition, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah. No, I always, when people would ask me about CrossFit, I said, there's so many factors. One, it's like, how are the coaches? How much are they, paying attention to form and teaching you that? But then I said, the only thing that bothers me is this intensity to do as much as you can with as much load as you can for as fast as you can. And that is like a formula for giving up form, unless that's really been, pounded in your head. So it's a interesting idea, but yeah, and I think it does really kind of help people get in great shape and find that competitive edge. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, going back to like coming from a different culture, do you feel like your work ethic was carried over with you? I mean, it sounds like you've just worked hard for a long time and that comes naturally to you. Did you see your parents do that? Is that something you saw in Thailand? I'm just curious from my own knowledge.
I think I can just speak based on from my family background. We always worked together. Like even in Thailand, like my mom would work. She has a really good corporate job. My dad was in the army. And like there's major holidays in Thailand where everyone in the family would get together, and then we would, the biggest thing in Thailand is, especially for my family, is they sell like bouquet of flowers on like graduation day. So I remember early on that it's a family thing that we do. We worked and we like disperse and we sell stuff. Like I that's all I knew. I wouldn't say it's a culture thing. Just because it was a culture thing, then I think Thailand as a country would be a different scenario, right? I think it's a family thing. That's something that we was brought up to do. And, they worked hard then, and then they had to work even harder when they moved here. So I've just always seen them working hard. And I think if you see that enough, the battle for me is like when I know I don't have to work that hard anymore, I can just have to work smarter. It's falling back to the trap where I can just outwork my problems.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that I do think the family thing is really important because it's been modeled and then it's been ingrained. And then it's just this idea of like problem solving, all of the stuff that you need for PT school and then owning your own business and all that. So let's venture to that. So you graduate from PT school. Did you go immediately and work in a clinic for someone else?
No, I had no desire to have my own business.
Oh, look at you. You really were a rebel. Yeah.
Yeah, no desire to own my own business because my parents opened up a Thai restaurant and I saw the struggle of owning their own business, like worked every single day to the point they were so burned out they ended up just selling the restaurant. So for me, I was like, all right, I put in all this hard work up front, which is getting my doctorate. I deserve to have some sort of stability where I can just show up to work, be home with my wife, have dinner, this and that, and then just climb up the corporate ladder. Like seriously, that was my game plan. And then after around like a year in to working into a big corporate setting, I realized like that was not going to be it. Like I could do that, have the stability to just have good income, but I'm constantly just sacrificing a piece of my soul and my integrity every single day because I'm not able to treat my patient to the best of my ability, not because I'm not capable of, it's because the constraint which placed upon me based on the setting I was at, which is seeing 3 patients an hour, coming home, making sure I do my documentation, which is obviously important, but if you're seeing 3 patients an hour and everyone's always running late, and by the time I get home, it's 9 o'clock, I eat dinner and I do notes, and after a year of that, I'm just like, man, like, what else is there? Is this it? Like, that's the one thing I kept coming to myself, like, is this it? Like, this is my life. This is what's going to be for the next 30, 40 years of my life.
Right, and that's really not much different than the workload you would have if you work for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And then you'd have, you'd take on risk, but the rewards would be because you can do it the way you want.
The reward was to be able to give the best care possible for my patient. And I take pride in what I do. And I also, I just really want to help people. And when someone come in and they clearly need all the attention, but I'm not able to give it to them because they're constrained, to me, I'm not living up to my own standards. So at that point, I started to look around to see what else is out there. And during that time's around 2017, there really weren't much. I would just be doing the same thing, but just wearing a different polo. So I started question a lot of things, right? Question the models, question why we are the way we are. In the beginning, everyone blamed insurance. And I was on part of that. I was like, oh, this insurance sucks. This is why we are where we're as our profession. And then I'm like, all right, then I'm just going to do what I used to do, is that I'm just going to go back to be a personal trainer, but add PT into that, right? And people used to pay me over $100 for me to solve their problem as a personal trainer. Why wouldn't they pay me more now that I have a doctorate? But sadly, it was mistaken and people would not pay for that. So I learned very quickly. And at that point, I just got through like massive depression. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what else to do.
So you're saying at that point, you had this desire, you were going to do your own thing, charge a little bit more money, thinking, of course, people that are in pain and want like actual quality attention would pay, but you weren't actually seeing people willing to pay that.
No.
That is what is so, and I feel like jumping on like a rock somewhere, and I just posted about it today on my Instagram. It's like, what? Like, I know everybody's financial comfort is different, but if you just peel back and think of yourself in your later years, hoping that we'll all live a long life, like, what are you going to look back on? You're going to look at how well you took care of yourself, because the way you take care of yourself is really a small ecosystem that ripples out. And the fact that so many people don't see that necessity, really, that's where they should spend their money instead of buying a thing that they in 30 years aren't going to really, think much of. Putting it and investing it in their health What have you found that people would say? I mean, yes, it's expensive, but what is the reason that they don't feel like that it's worth the money to actually go to somebody who is highly educated, therefore more likely to really help you exponentially?
I can say a couple things on this. First thing is, I think us as provider in the healthcare industry, we do a really bad job at branding ourselves to say like, hey, here's the problem that we solve, this and that, compared to, let's say, people in the finance field where they do a really good job at branding themselves. It's like, why is it that people are able to put $15,000 aside every single year to invest in their retirement, right? But the way I see it is, why don't we do the same thing when it comes to our health? So to me, it's the branding and marketing issues than anything. I think it's a lack of clarity as what we do as physical therapists, as a healthcare provider. I just recently did a talk at my PT school, and I asked them, like, what do you think is it that what is it that we're really good at? And they raised their hand. They're like, oh, we're really good at movement. I was like, all right. If I asked the same question but with a bunch of personal training, what do you think they would say? They would say exact same thing you just said. I say, what else are we good at? And they're like, oh, we're really good at like listening to people and finding out their pain problem. I was like, all right, cool. If I get a room full of psychologists, what do you think they would say? Right? And we have an identity crisis where we don't know what we're good at, right? I took a continuing education course, and this one guy just say like, what we need to say is like, we're pretty much the greatest head of evidence-based practice. And we help people solve pain problem through movement and other intervention. I was like, great, I can hang my hat on that. So I think it's a branding problem. That's why people don't view us as the solution, right? As someone that can help them. So if you can't say what you do, how do you get people to raise their hand to say, please help me? And also, we're battling big corporation that taking over healthcare industry. We're also battling like, big pharmaceutical company who market pain relief at $5, like with Advil and stuff. So if we market pain relief, why would they come to us? Go to CVS, get Advil. Now they save an hour of their time and the commute time and all the struggle to come to us, right? So I think it's the brand issue. And the second thing is, within our culture in America especially, we love instant gratification, and there's beauty in life when it comes to dealing with personal tragedy. And the reason I say this, I lost my dad in 2019, and that has changed my perspective tremendously. I wouldn't care about my health as much. Now I'm very conscious. Like, I do my zone 2 cardio all the time. I'm taking care of my heart health. But again, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't think about that. And most of the times, we are very blessed as society that we don't have to go through those hardships so much. But once you go through those hardships, then you realize like, oh my God, I really need to invest in my health. So that's why people who are in the sandwich generation, where they see the parents are declining, and they're like, oh crap, like that's me in like 10 years. I don't want to look like that, or I don't want to be limited like them. And they see their kids who also a younger version of them, like, oh my God, I used to be so lively. I used to be so youthful. I was like, I want to get that back. So that's why those are the people that, in a way, are willing to invest in their health, because they see both sides.
I love that you pinpointed that it's a branding issue, because I feel like I have that in lit yoga in a lot of ways, because we are much more than yoga. I incorporate physical therapy and functional mobility and education. So it's not just kind of telling you how to move around the mat and doing all these things, but it's still, we're always looking how to crystallize that information in a compact soundbite to make people realize this is something different. This is worth spending money on, and it's still very reasonable, I think. What have you done in your own branding that you felt has worked well to give people that like 1 minute elevator pitch that they're like, yeah, I actually want to come to your clinic?
Yeah, I think is getting down and deep into who can I best serve. I think that's the biggest thing. The one thing I have to realize was I was not the solution for everyone, and was unethical of me to tell everybody that I can solve all their problems, and clearly I cannot. So what I did was I was like, all right, who do I like to work with, and how can I get them the fastest results possible based on the time investment, the financial investment that they're giving me. And based on that, I was like, okay, I like to work with active population, an active adult who likes to stay fit, stay active, and they want to live the way they envision themselves of living, right? I think that's the biggest thing. If they have that in their mind, that's what they want to do. They want to pursue that, right? And they see value in that. And also, this go into like all my younger athletes, these are kids who have aspiration of playing at a higher level, right? These are people that willing to invest time and resource to do that. So from that point, I would say, okay, these are the people that I can best serve, and they understand the value it provides. So I then start creating my whole business around that, my message, whatever I do, even like my clinic, right? When people walk in, like I want them to have that feeling, oh my God, I'm about to go into like a Division I like weight room, right? I want the active adult that come in that might be older, they're like, oh my God, I'm about to kick some butt. And that's the environment that I set. So to answer your question,
it's like training for life, right?
Yes,
it's not
exactly.
just like coming in and getting like somebody's passively moving your joints. It's like you're going to come and
And I think it's just shifting from like lifespan into health span. And I think that's a new concept, right? Where the lifespan is how long do you live? The health span is how well do you live? And I think we don't emphasize on how well people live.
And you know what I found, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, is people get a pretty rigid mindset about their perceptions of what they're capable of, or even, what they're not capable of. So someone gets used to living with a low degree of discomfort, and they just think that's part of aging, or that's just me. My mom had it. My sister has it. How do you address those people who come in and are like, I don't think I can, really do that or do this? Like, how do you kind of come in a side door and intervene in a way that shows them that?
I think the best approach I've found is meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
So I just like when we talk to small children or anyone, you get to their level and say, hey, where are you? Cool. Like, what is the one quick win I can get you for you to like start changing your beliefs a little bit, right? Yeah. So for me, like people like to have, again, when it comes to New Year resolution, people fail because they set this grand big goal. And once it seems impossible, they stop. So for me, I try to get all my patients away from that mindset immediately. I say, okay, cool, you're coming in. Within the next 3 weeks, I want to see this. And when you get here, when you get this range of motion, this will allow you to do X, Y, and Z. So I link the small goal that we're going to get that seem insignificant to them to the bigger picture. So from there, they kind of follow the breadcrumbs. And all I'm trying to do is just habit stack each thing.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I talk about a lot about habits. So talk about the name of your clinic. How did you come up with it? What does it mean? What is like your mission statement?
Okay. So Myokinetix just kind of came to me like when I was sleeping. Before I had two names, right? The first one was Myokinetix and the second one was Vector, because I'm like a little bit of a nerd. So like Vector is direction of force.
Love it.
So like it's like guiding people. But during that time, like Despicable Me just came out, and the villain name is Vector. So I was like, I'm not gonna go with that.
Yeah.
So Myokinetix just really spoke to me. Myo is muscle, right? Mm-hmm. Kinetics is movement. So that's exactly what we do. And I want to be a movement-driven clinic. So I was like, oh, why not just go with that name instead?
Yeah.
And that's always a mission that I had, and it just kind of set us apart in some way where it's not any like, like we've been to PT where like, oh, it's sport meds, it's sport this, it's sport that. And to be honest, for the first 2 years, I didn't have the name physical therapy in my company at all. It was performance and recovery, right? And then people were kind of getting confused, like, wait, are you guys PTs? Are you guys trainers? What do you do? Like, and I knew that we were on the right path because people were kind of confused. And that's how it should be, because we're breaking the mold, right? If they can say, oh, these guys does PT, then it's like, all right, now we're just fitting the standard. We want to, change the standard And going back to the mission statement is to inspire hope and contribute to the health and well-being to people around the world. And the word hope just means so much to me. I talk to my team about this all the time, and I'm a big sci-fi Star Wars nerd, and like one of the biggest quote in Rogue One is that rebellions are built from hope. So I think for us to start a movement, especially within ourselves, we need to have hope. Because if you're not hopeful, why would you change your circumstances? So that's always been my mission.
Yeah, and I love hope because it's an optimism, but it's an optimism that requires action. It's not just like, yeah, let's just, think positively. It's really like, well, I hope to be my best, and there's going to be actions that I need to take to make that a reality. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful word. I love that.
Yeah, and hope is a prerequisite for action.
Oh, absolutely. Otherwise, you're apathetic or just, inert.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get people coming to your clinic? This is for anybody like who's listening who might be a PT or have be a yoga teacher or have some kind of private business, and customers are they drive our business.
Mm-hmm. So we like to get people to come in by just starting a relationship. So for me, the way I get to serve my patient is how do I provide as much value as possible without them even giving me anything. So like from the website, from the content, from social media, from everything, all we're trying to do is just provide value. And what I want to earn people trust by just letting them see like who we are and being transparent in everything that we do. And like I've been really fortunate to be in business for 5 years, and the people I get to be a part of, especially in their lives, and even referral partners who share the same value and same principle. Like I'm incredibly thankful for that. Now we have strength coaches, yoga's instructor, even high school coaches, athletic trainer, like surgeon, doctors. These are people who are aligned with our values. And just because I believe in putting out positivity, you put out and you attract what you put out. It's been great because the people that come to us, most likely, I love working with coaches and trainer, right? And even yoga instructor is that, I'm always learning. So whatever I learn, I try to share it with the community. I'm just trying to serve the community as much as possible. So we'll host workshop. Last year we did this one thing. It was pretty cool. Last minute, I call it Pelvic Con. So we call all the coaches, personal trainers, small group instructor to our clinic, and we close down a clinic for the whole Saturday just to educate them. Like, hey, these are the symptoms of pelvic floor. These are what you can do to serve your community better. This is how you become better coaches. And if you need any help from us any farther, please let us know. And I think that's the way I've been getting new patients. It's because I'm just here to serve the community.
I love that. I know that you look at each individual globally, not as, like, oh, you have this knee issues or whatever. But if you could, from a PT standpoint, if you had to like code, what do you see the most that is maybe dysfunctional or coming with, whether it's an injury or just needing to improve performance? Is there an area of the body or mechanics that you feel like are addressed regularly, or is it just kind of all over the map?
So my clinic, we position ourselves as almost like a last resort kind of clinic. So we get people who have failed multiple attempts at PT, chiropractor, whatever it is, or someone who have season-ending injury like ACL tear, UCL tear, and they want to make sure that they're in the right hands, pretty much. What I've seen the most, it's not a mechanical thing, but rather lack of communication. And I think that's why I would say 80% plan of care fail, is because the therapist, due to the environment constraint that placed upon them, do not have the time or the resources to communicate effectively with the patient. And that's why us having a one-on-one model for a whole hour give us the leverage of saying like, hey, let's talk it out. What worked? What didn't work? What are you trying to do? What do you want to get to? Why is that important to you? Like, what else do you need? So I think if we can communicate effectively, chances are the plan of care will go through really well because we have better rapport, right? And the patient wants to feel that they have a team behind them. And that's what I say to every single new patient we have is that we have 4 great clinicians, like besides myself. And when someone's come in, I say, hey, listen, this is how it works. You get to see me, but you also get to see all these other clinicians, right? We want to pair you up with the best clinician, but also we want other people to see how you move because I don't want my own biases to limit their potential of what they could be. So having other set of eyes on them is a lot better, right? So that's the approach that we have. And what's cool is that all of us, the clinicians, speak the same language. We might have different treatment, different things, but we know the outcome. We know what's the end going to look like. And we talk about it too. If we disagree, I was like, no, like let's come to term of what do you think, based on what the patients say they want to do, what is that going to look like for them and how do we reverse engineer that whole process to get them there?
And would you say, again, not trying to be cookie cutter, but I know these are the type of questions people would love, is that in general, whether it's somebody who's an athlete or somebody who's a, office worker but wants to stay in shape, are people generally lacking strength, generally lacking range of motion, flexibility, quote, quote? What do you see?
If I'm going to be extremely biased, I think we lack stimulus in both strength and range of motion. And yes, so we're pretty much underperform when it comes to our physical aspect. So we're under challenge as well. So for example, everything that designed for us to use is to make our lives a lot easier, and therefore we're not as resilient as we used to be. So, for you to, again, this is I love this thing, right, where people say when it's snowing out, most people get a heart attack, and because they're not used to working it vigorously at that intensity of lifting heavy load and moving in different direction, right? People often throw their back out when they have to go shovel snow. So because we're under stimulus when it comes to that. And, the fact that you and I set out time aside to train our bodies, and the training is great for the mind, but also it's great to prepare what's life going to throw at you. So I 100% back in my day when I was training CrossFit, I transitioned to weightlifting. Mobility is a huge thing. Like I need overhead mobility, but I also need overhead stability, and that comes with strength. So from my journey standpoint, like you will only attain what you train. And if you don't train your range of motion, you don't train stability, you don't train strength, you will not have those things. And for us as society, like again, since COVID, we sit a lot more, we work remotely, and because of that, we're unchallenged. And when you're unchallenged, that's when you are the most compromised to illness and etc.
Yeah, I love that answer. I always talk about like movement variability is not infinite, but it's way up there. And yet we have really limited our movement experience just in our modern day life. I think even pre-COVID, people sitting a lot more and just becoming and it's like the whole Newton's law, things at rest want to stay at rest. Like you have to overcome some of the those forces on you, and you have to realize, like you said, you've got to put something in, buzz you up, get you moving in a variety of ways, adding some demand. And it's so good for your body. It's so good for your brain. It's so good for your emotional state to have those challenges. I just taught a class today, and it was called the atmosphere of growth. And it's this idea of, well, that saying is actually not mine. I want to give credit always. It's from a book about the Happiness Project that Gretchen Rubin wrote. And that was one of the kind of pillars was atmosphere of growth. And it's this, we want to be able to think like, I can change the way I move, the way I feel, but that's that hope, that feeling of like, can I have that invitation for growth? And part of growth is also observing where you are and examining your tendencies. So if you do tend to sit a lot, there's got to be some kind of like stimulus in there to get you growing, get you moving, get you changing, get you having more energy. So there's so many techniques behind that, but I love that that we need more stimulus. I totally agree.
And I kind of want to ask you on this too. I would love your take on this. Mm-hmm. This is the question I've been asking a lot of people when I meet them is, What are your thoughts on like happiness?
I prefer the word purpose and then the things that surround that. And actually, there has been some research on it. People find more joy and fulfillment and contentment in life when they are connecting to purpose versus striving for happiness. Happiness is a beautiful word. It's a state of being, but I don't think it's an end goal. I think you have to be connected to your purpose, your core values, your life, and in alignment. I talk a lot about that on the mat and in life. Like when we pay attention to alignment, we're not just paying attention to it biomechanically or like some kind of rigid construct, but this overarching idea that if we pay more attention as we move, as we breathe, inevitably that spills over and we pay more attention in our life, and we might catch ourselves like, is this really something that's in alignment with who I am? And I think when we kind of close the gap between acting in ways that aren't in alignment, making choices that aren't in alignment, and everything becomes more in alignment, more in tune, that is what brings us that sense of like peace, happiness, contentment. But I think, yeah, when, if you were to say, are you happy? I think I would reframe it like I'm really purposeful and fulfilled and feel joy. All of that is happiness in a way, but it's not like just this kind of idea, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I think for me, like I like to keep it simple. The way I looked at happiness is a moment-to-moment thing.
Yes.
If I have to like put it down a sentence, it's like the way I view my own happiness is happiness for me is the moment when I decide to get up after I fell on my way to discovering my purpose.
I love that. That's resilience, and that's like, and I think like you said, the moment-to-moment thing, because if we're thinking of happiness, it's never going to be every single moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like being able to handle, like you lost your dad. I lost my dad in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a sadness, I'll cry talking about it. It's so hard. But it also, there's lots of joy because that love is so huge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was having a conversation with a group of friends in Dallas, and we were talking about even the concept of purpose, right? And again, I would love your thought on this. We were talking about how, again, everything is commercialized. I think it's commercialized on happiness. If you go back 10 years ago and you look at the amount of books at Barnes & Noble that have happiness title into it, I'm sure there's a lot. Now they shift from happiness to purpose. And it's almost, we're talking about, there's this concept of like shaming people for not having a purpose.
Oh, wow. We could go down a rabbit hole there because I have this exercise in one of my level 2 modules where I like ask a lot of questions, and it's like core values and then purpose. And there'll be some people who it really is upsetting because they're like, I don't really know. And it's like, it's an inquiry. The investigation is not an answer with a period at the end. It should be kind of, I think in a way, shape-shifting. Like it should, are you in alignment with your core values? But the purpose doesn't necessarily need to be something that you can articulate. Mm-hmm. It's a feeling. Like, you wake up in the morning and you feel like excited about what you're doing with your life, in your professional life, in your, personal life. And that's always a balancing act. It's not like, again, just a scale that's you got it. It's not like this boom point. It's like, okay, am I giving and getting enough in my relationships? And, just going down that path. But I agree with you. Like sometimes if you ask, like, what's your purpose to somebody? It's like, I don't know. It's just, people might think, to make a lot of money or to like get married. And it's like, no, it's more, I think, esoteric and also simple in a way. It's like, what gets you up in the morning? Like, are you, the people that work to work to make money to enjoy something else and don't really enjoy working. Some people would say, wow, what are you doing? You're not. But I say, okay, everybody's kind of version of it can look different, you know? So maybe they're not loving every moment of their job. That might not work for you or me, but it works for them because it allows them the financial freedom or other kind of freedom to do the things that they really love that they couldn't otherwise do. So I think it shouldn't be limiting. It should really just be like, it's kind of like a philosophical question.
Yeah.
More than anything. I don't think you have to have an answer.
And I think society dictates that we have to have a concrete answer. Then otherwise, then you don't know where you're going and you're aloof. But I would say like 80% of the time I feel like aloof. But if I have 20% direction, I think I'm pretty good.
I mean, we were just talking about like in my house, like I showed you where I had my yoga studio at home. And then I just was like, well, I never had that purpose of like, I'm going to do this, this. But I think it's an inner listening that points you in a direction that feels right, you know? And that's, again, it doesn't have to be defined. And like you said, if it's 20% of the time, that's great. That's something. That's not sitting in apathy and just like doing what everybody, I think, can you stand in your own kind of soul and dictate the direction you want to go that is the most, you know, in line with what your beliefs are? I think that's really purpose versus doing what somebody is expecting you or culture or whatever, and it not necessarily being in line with what you want.
Yeah. And like, to me, like, just, again, purpose is like having a compass. You're not looking at the compass all the time when you're walking. Again, I use GPS, right? But I don't look at it all the time. That's what a compass is now, modern day. And one of our core values at Myokinetix is be on purpose. And I love that so much because it's define societal norms, right? And think about it. Every time someone does something wrong, people always say, you did that on purpose. But what about when I do something right? Why don't you say that I did that on purpose? So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to make this a core value because everything that we do has to be on purpose. And purpose is just saying, doing the thing that you say you were going to do, right? Having the intention behind it and actually execute on that intention.
It's like integrity, yeah.
Yes, because you and I know in healthcare, and I think especially you now because of how big you are, how widely recognized you are, there's always an ethical dilemma of business opportunities, just like myself, all that stuff, where things presented itself, whereas might be a good opportunity, intention is clear, but you know the action on in which we execute on that could be a little bit murky, and therefore it's not purposeful, and it's not. That's why it's so hard to be ethical. As the more big you are, the more well known you are, and you can see how some people ended up losing their ways the bigger they get.
Oh yeah, oh totally. Well, yeah, I feel kind of like a little bit in a you know, not a like in a vault. I'm not aware. I don't think I'm aware of, you know, the impacts so much, except for the people that I interact with. And some also being older, I think really helps, like, because I've lived more years in my bones and my understanding of myself, and I think that always helps, don't you?
Yeah, and I think having a great team around you.
Oh my God, I have the best team. Shout out to Lit Yoga Team. Oh my gosh, we
can have
true.
A toss up. Who has a better team?
I bet we both have amazing teams. How's that? Yeah, I think that's really crucial because people can try and go at things alone and they can be successful, but you're always going to be more successful and more content when you have others who are contributing and you're elevating them too. You know, it's like this wonderful symbiotic relationship where everybody's kind of winning. Mm-hmm. It's so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. And it's not fun.
Yeah.
Like
do it all yourself.
Yeah.
No. And let me tell you, I suck at so many things. Like I have people I do my own social media. That's about the only thing I do. But I mean, I film, I educate, but there's a lot of stuff that you know, in terms of managing and organizing, I'm kind of like a crazy scientist that like leaves their lab that has all this stuff. You know, I'm just like, there's certain things I'm just really, I'm so much better off having like those Virgos in my life who are like, we got to get this done. It's got to look like this. We're going to organize. It's great.
I think you and I are the same, like where like I love my team to death. Like they're great. And the one thing I always say, like, I'm smart enough to know that I'm dumb. So like,
I love that.
So people can always like give me feedback and all of that. And you and I are similar where Tony Robbins talk about this, where like we're like the artists in our business, right? That's all we're trying to do is It's using our creativity to create a better product, to solve the problem for the people, right? And solve the next problem for them before they realize that they have a problem, right? And that's what we're trying to do. That's why Lit Yoga has grown to the way it is, because you're constantly innovating. And for me, what I take pride on is being able to innovate and take different things from different businesses, different field, and apply it to the model that I have for healthcare in way to serve the patient even harder. Like serve them like to the point that I want them to feel like, man, like why wasn't I not here sooner? Like, oh my God, they helped me solve my pain problem, but also ate of the problem I didn't know I had. And to me, that gets me so excited every single morning, because I'm like, all right, how do I tackle this on? How do I make it better? Like by just me starting a podcast in 2020, I'm like, that's the way I'm going to serve my patient, because we're shut down. We're not allowed to see patient. And I don't want people to lose hope. And that was the whole point of having a podcast. So I'm always thinking of like refining things. And I had a deep conversation with a buddy of mine where he's like, dude, if someone come up, give you 10 million, like, would you take it and sell the practice? Like, honestly, no, because I wouldn't know what to do.
I totally agree. Yeah, we are cut from the same cloth, because I'm excited. Like I've taught thousands of classes and thousands of people. And yet every day there is a sense of a little novelty. And I think it's because of my creativity. And this is really important for people listening. If you are not as creative, that's okay. You might be more organized. I think it's really amplify your strength and don't necessarily try and do the things you're not good at. Because I know my creativity and my juice and my like just vision would be super dampened if I had to spend energy doing the stuff that I don't like, that I'm not good at. It would really drag me down. And so as soon as you can, if you're working for yourself, as soon as you can, squeak out a little, of your cash flow to somebody to allocate. That would be my best piece of advice, because it slows you down. And investing now you'll get the investment back tenfold, but it's always scary when you're not necessarily seeing a lot of influx and you're doing it all, and you just feel like that kind of scarcity. Like I don't have enough to pay somebody else to do something. Do it, like scrounge to do it, because it'll free you up so you can be in your lane of your whatever your like genius is, and it just is really magical. And I think that is the beauty of a team, is really recognizing everybody's strength.
But that's also go against like societal teaching, right? I think we're on a path. I think it seemed like this podcast is going debunking societal false belief, where you have to be good at everything, right?
No.
And when you go on Instagram, there's someone who's doing something better than you, and you feel less than from the beginning. Like, how do you win from that, right? So in your journey, how did you realize like, hey, that's my zone of genius. It's okay for me to let go of not being good at 8 other things because I'm good at these 2 things?
Well, I think I did it slowly enough, and most of my journey into like having a studio and all that was still very much based on my creativity. There was, like logistical things, how to check people in, how to take money. I didn't advertise for 2 years. I didn't even really understand. I didn't know marketing was a needed thing, because I had done so much. I had so much word of mouth. So a lot of it was like luck in that way. And then once I started to expand more and need more, it's like I attracted the people. What I've been really lucky about is people who recognized like what I was offering was really unique and cool, and felt compelled to help me, because they saw like, you're kind of like a magician in this way, and I could really help you get out there more, because I'm really good at this. I'm a magician in this way. Like I'm a really good marketer and all that. So some of it, in all honesty, was just, I really had so many amazing people literally come up and like, let me help you. I feel you could do this. I could do that. And I was open to it. So I think my creative juices were always there. And then it's like, oh, okay, sure. That sounds like a great idea. So yeah, that's, some of it was just organic and taking the time. And I think it's also important for people to realize, 5 years, that's still very like no time at all. But when you start something, don't be in a rush, like be true to yourself, obviously get out there and work hard, but things do take time. They really do.
Yeah, and this is why I love like working out and yoga, right? Because you go at it all the time, and there's something true with working out is time and attention. You just go reps after reps, just like pose after pose. Like you do your warrior one pose until you can own that pose, and then you slowly just keep scaling. Listen, like the whole headstand progression is fantastic, right? Because
except we don't do headstands and lit.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, you get it.
But
just the progression of like any kind of progression, whether it's in a yoga pose or in the weight room, it's like you build and you build slowly, and can I handle this? Okay, I'm gonna add more load. And I always say, like, don't be in a rush to get somewhere, because there's nowhere you're gonna get, right? There's not like a point you're like, I got it, boom, I've hit the button. It's like every day is a new opportunity to kind of challenge yourself more from where you are at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's why, going back to like the way the clinic's set up, where what we're trying to get away from, and maybe subconsciously, I haven't verbalized this is the first time I verbalized it, is we're trying to get people away from the if-then fallacy, right? When they come in, they say, if I can run, then I can do this. If I can do this, then I can be a better mom, right? I think what we're trying to do in a subconscious way, when people come in, it's like, no, you're good enough. Because you're good enough, now you deserve the best care, and this is why you deserve to do X, Y, and Z. So we like literally just flip it the other way, because most of the time when people don't come see us sooner, it's because they don't feel like they are worthy of our kind of service. They're not worthy, right? Because lit is different than regular, mass media yoga, where most people come in like, oh, I can't do headstand, so I'm not going to do lit yoga, right? But then you have to come in, it's like, no, that's not what we do. Here's how we do it. This is what we do. And because, you're not ready, it's when you're ready. So why don't we just do it?
Yeah, I love that. And I do think, I think that's a great way of approaching it. Like, you are worth it. You're already good enough. This is just going to reveal it more to you. And that's really what we're trying to do, is through education and empowerment, like, recognize your greatness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the business you create, the space you create for your community, I think it just speaks volume on the fact that this is the place where people can just be who they are and be on their own journey, right? And if you look in the world, there's really not much of that around, because anywhere you look there's always a constant, again, capitalism strive on people not feeling good enough, and they not feeling enough, and they need the next thing and do this and that, under the sake of, you can be more comfortable in your life, right? And every time, I lost like 20 pounds, like, since last year. So I've been on like my health grind. And the one thing I say to myself, if I go a little bit overboard, and my wife laughed at this, like, yeah, I'm just on my way to like get gout right now. If I'm just drinking red wine, eating seafood and steak, and I just imagine myself like in that movie WALL-E. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah.
Everyone just laying down.
Yeah.
And like just order food, and food just come in, and like next thing you know, they'll shoot a food for you, and then they'll ingest it for you. Like, like, people just don't want to do anything anymore.
Yeah. Well, there is that, like, it's almost in I think I've read this as well, but it really is serving some very instinctive primordial part of our brain, which worked for us many, thousands of years ago when we were trying to conserve energy. And we still kind of tap into this like conservation of energy, and we have to do the opposite now. We actually flip the script, and we need to move more. We need to pay attention to everything we put in our body, and then how we're moving and living, because we aren't actually, most of us aren't moving enough. And we don't need to conserve the energy for the most part. There's some people who are like doing hard labor and doing physical stuff, but that's not our lifestyle. Is, like you said, is set up like park as close as you can, order, everything's come, we don't really have to do. And that's where, like, when people clock the steps they take in a day, some people are like really against that because they think it's like punitive if you don't mark it. And some people love that. And I don't do that, but I feel like if that helps you kind of assess, because you have no idea, you've only lived in this space of who you've been, it might be really nice to have like a tracking system, but not in a punitive way. But if that makes you feel punitive if you do it, then don't do it. Like, you got to know yourself and know what you're inspired by.
I think it's all going back to things you can take ownership of, right? I think the overarching thing as far as like purpose, right? If you can take ownership of your action and the things that you do every day, you are on your way to discovering your purpose. But if you're not taking ownership of your situation, in a way, like you're just giving your power away. Like obviously the concept of like learn helplessness, we all heard it. And there's also another book, it's called Learn Helpfulness, which is the opposite of that, right? It's
That's
all
like
about
finding your purpose, or you didn't do that on purpose, or you did it on purpose. It's like reframing that.
Yeah, and it's just pretty much just having the ability to say, hey, I totally messed up. That was on me. And I say, oh, because of that, here's what I'm going to do differently. And I think that's the beauty of being a human being, and that's the beauty of having free will, where you get the ability to make your own decision. But with that decision come consequences you have to be okay with dealing with, but also learn from it and then make different decisions.
Yeah, it's like having ownership. I don't think people are really necessarily taught that or modeled that. You see how people have, like all of us have a hard time saying like, oh, I messed up on that, or what, maybe more with our loved ones.
Yeah. It's always a big moment, right? Like people, and I think the reason you and I can have this kind of conversation, and it's a little bit deep than a normal conversation we would have at like a coffee shop or whatever, is because we have more time to reflect. And us, like normal and people, like when I was younger, I would only reflect when I do something really bad or someone just dumped me or like a big moment, like what did I do? What's wrong with me? And it's not from like, I don't go home and ask like, what's wrong with me today? But like in my journal, I write down like, cool, like what's the win today? All right, what can I do better tomorrow? And I'll write that down, and tomorrow that's the first thing I say. It's like, okay, here's what I didn't do so well. Here's what I'm looking to tackle on today. All right, great, let's go.
Can you give an example of that? I would just love to know, like, what would be like something that was a win, and what is something that you would like to do better?
Yeah. So, for example, I like to get better at my home life, my own personal relationship, and like with my marriage. I think it's Nick here that's with us. He just got engaged, and I told him like as soon as he got engaged, I said, look, there's no better feeling than just to impress one person. But that doesn't mean it's easier. It's a lot harder because you have to go deep. So I'm constantly trying to go deeper in like with the relationship I have with my wife. So for example, like if we get to have dinner for half an hour, I would love to have it for 45. So now we can have a longer conversation. So then the next day I can say, okay, cool. Or how could I leave my office earlier so that way I can beat the traffic and then be home early, right? Something like that. It's not a can I thing. Just you see how I have to like
like how can I
correct myself, and like we all fall into this. Or like for me, every morning I take a cold shower, and there's day where I just want to do it for a minute rather than 5, right? So if I know I did it for a minute, then the next day is okay. Maybe I'll do 3 minutes today just to make up for it.
I like that a lot. And I think that like that how can I is really good. One thing my husband does so well, and I'm trying to like infuse more of that, is that he wakes up thinking about me and how to make my life better. And that's kind of how he's wired. And I'm not wired that way. It doesn't mean I'm not a good person. It's just like I'm one of 4. I'm a triplet. I think I had a lot more like, you got to take care of yourself a little bit. There's a lot of you there. And, and so I'm really wired to like take care of my own needs and all that. I've been married 21 and a half years, so I, of course, think about him, but he literally wakes up and it's like, how can I support you today? What do you need? And so I'm really like, I'm trying to do more of that automatically. And it's wonderful in a healthy relationship how you can really help each other grow in becoming better versions of yourself.
Yeah. And my wife's the same way.
Yeah.
And
I think that allows us to do what we're doing. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like
if I was married to somebody like me, I don't know, honestly, if I could do what I'm doing at this level, because that person would be thinking about what they're doing and all that. And it's, I think this is a really good shout out to all the partners out there who really make it possible. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. I think it's the best part. Like the one quote I just read or tweet about it is like, there's no, the external success would not make up for internal failure. And it's always good to go back because for us, it's so easy to just go and work and do all these things because when work is fun, it's really hard to pull back.
Yeah, it totally is. Like it really blurs the line and I've gotten a lot better at that. And some of it has been, my team is bigger now too. And so I feel like this breathing room and space that I'm like, oh, I don't have to think about it tonight. I can just close the computer and be with my husband and do something. Versus when it was a smaller team, I was doing more of some of those things that I didn't really like and was worried about, and like felt like I needed to kind of answer this or answer that or do that. And it's a balancing act, and you learn. So we could talk forever, and I love that it's like two physios talking about life and love and pursuit of purpose.
Societal pressure.
Yeah, all of it. So tell everybody where they can find out more about you, your offerings, whether it's online, in person, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so if you want to connect with me, you can find me on all social media platform, Dr. Natty, DOCTOR.NATTY. If you are in Jersey area and you would love some help at my clinic, we would love to have you. You can find us at Myokinetix, so MYOKINETIX.com, or just find out on social media.
Wonderful. We'll have that on the show notes. So make sure you check out Natty, and you have a podcast.
Yes. Same thing, Myokinetix Podcast, or Badass Clinicians, which is a new one that's there to empower other clinics owner to, get their clinic in order, helping them how to scale. So that way we can create a greater impact and take back the healthcare industry that should be ours from in the beginning.
Amen. Amen. Exactly. We want to work for the people, not for the corporations. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It was great to have you in person. You're so, you have an energy that is just infectious. So I can't wait to visit your clinic and see you in action. And thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. And a warm welcome for me and my team, and even the dog is fantastic. So
I know. Orlando's lying here beside me. He's a good guy.
Yes. So yeah, we would love to have you in the clinic and even do a workshop.
Yeah.
We're open to it.
All right. Sounds great. Well, for everybody listening, make sure you check out Natty. And as always, I'm pulling for you.